$25,000 saved is a good start. Every financial advisor says it. Every personal finance checklist confirms it. Every well-meaning article about building wealth points to that number as early evidence that you are doing something right. And they're not wrong. $25,000 is more than most Americans have saved at any age. Federal Reserve data consistently shows a median American household cannot cover a $1,000 emergency without borrowing. So clearing $25,000 is real. It matters. The people telling you to celebrate that milestone are not lying to you, but they are not telling you the whole truth either. Because at $25,000 saved, something else begins, quietly and visibly without announcement. A clock, a mechanism most people never learn to hear until years later, when they look back and realize it was running the entire time. The myth is that $25,000 is simply a number. The truth is that it is a starting gun. And almost nobody hears it fire, but nobody ever asks the obvious question. If $25,000 saved is a meaningful milestone, if crossing that threshold actually signals real financial progress, then why do the overwhelming majority of people who reach it end up stuck there? Not temporarily. For years, sometimes permanently. The number sits in the account. Life continues. And the clock that started ticking the moment they crossed $25,000 runs silently in the background while nothing compounds, nothing accelerates, and nothing changes. Not because they stopped trying, because there is a specific hidden requirement nobody mentions at the moment of celebration. $25,000 does not build wealth by existing. It builds wealth by being positioned correctly at the exact moment the clock starts. And positioning is not something most people think about, because nobody told them the clock was running. The question nobody asks at $25,000 is not how do I save more? It is what should this money be doing right now that it almost certainly is not doing? That question changes everything. Here is the actual data. $25,000 invested at a 10% average annual return, the S&P 500's long-run historical average, becomes approximately $433,000 over 30 years, without adding a single additional dollar. The money simply compounds, uninterrupted, for 3 decades. That same $25,000 sitting in a standard savings account earning 0.5%, the national average rate at most traditional banks, becomes roughly $29,000 over those same 30 years. The difference between those two outcomes is not effort, not income, not discipline. It is positioning. And the gap it produces is $404,000. Not a rounding error, not a theoretical abstraction. $400,000 vanished because the clock was running and the money was parked in the wrong place while it ran. Here is what makes this gut punch land harder. Most people with $25,000 saved have it sitting in a checking or standard savings account right now, not invested, not compounding, just sitting, while the most valuable financial window of their life quietly closes around them. So why does nobody tell you about the clock at $25,000? Because safety sells better than urgency. The entire financial wellness conversation around early savings is built on encouragement. You save $25,000. That is remarkable. Keep going. You are ahead of most people your age. That message feels good. It generates shares. It builds audiences. It sells courses about saving more. What does not sell is the uncomfortable follow-up conversation. The one that says, the moment you crossed $25,000, time became your most expensive variable. Every month that money sits unpositioned is a month of compounding you cannot recover. Ever. That message creates anxiety. It creates urgency. It makes people feel behind instead of celebrated. And feeling behind does not generate likes. There's also an institutional dimension nobody discusses openly. Traditional banks profit directly from your $25,000 sitting in a low-yield account. They lend it at multiples of what they pay you. Your inertia is their revenue. Your unawareness is their business model. The myth persists because too many people profit from it persisting. Here is what the clock is actually measuring, and why it starts at $25,000 specifically. Below that threshold, compound growth exists mathematically, but barely moves the needle emotionally or practically. At $5,000, a 10% annual return produces $500. Meaningful, but not yet self-sustaining. At $10,000, you are looking at $1,000 in annual growth. Still supplementary. Still feels like a small bonus. At $25,000, something shifts. A 10% return now produces $2,500 in a single year. That is a car payment, a month of rent in most cities, a flight, a bill, an emergency, covered entirely by growth, without touching the principal. For the first time, the money is generating an amount that registers as real in everyday life. This is the real mechanism. $25,000 is the exact threshold where compounding stops being abstract and starts being tangible, where the portfolio begins producing something you can feel. The clock is measuring how much of that tangible, accelerating growth window you are actually capturing, versus how much you are leaving behind in an account designed to hold your money still while your time runs out. Here is a pattern that repeats more consistently than almost any other in personal finance. Someone crosses $25,000 saved. They feel the momentum. They are proud, rightfully. They tell themselves they will figure out the investing piece soon. Next month, after the holidays, once things settle down at work, once they understand it better, once they feel more ready. 18 months pass. The money is still sitting in the same account, still earning 0.5%, still unpositioned. The clock has been running the entire time, and they have captured almost none of it. This is the most common mistake at this milestone. Not recklessness, not bad decisions, not overspending. Inertia, the paralysis of almost knowing enough but not quite acting. The false comfort of having the money safely parked while the real cost accumulates invisibly in the background. Here is what makes this mistake uniquely devastating at $25,000 specifically. This is the window where early positioning produces the most dramatic long-term results. The compounding curve is steepest at the beginning. Every month of delay here costs more than a month of delay at $100,000 or $200,000. Waiting feels safe. The math says otherwise. Here is the exact sequence. Simple, specific, and executable this week. First, separate the emergency fund from the investment capital. Of your $25,000, designate 3 to 6 months of actual living expenses as your emergency reserve. Move that portion into a high-yield savings account earning 4% or above, not a standard bank account earning fractions of percent. That money stays liquid. That money does not get invested. That is your wall. Second, deploy the remainder immediately. Whatever sits above your emergency threshold gets moved into a broad market index fund. Total market, or S&P 500. Low expense ratio. Tax advantage account first. Roth IRA if eligible. For 401k if employer matched. Taxable brokerage account after that. The vehicle matters less than the action. Done today beats optimized next quarter every single time. Third, automate a monthly contribution forward. Even $200 a month added to a properly positioned $25,000 produces compounding results that dwarf a larger amount sitting idle. The fix is not complicated. It never was. The only thing standing between your $25,000 and $400,000 is the decision to stop letting the clock run without capturing it. Here is the timeline, honest, unembellished, and worth sitting with. If you position your $25,000 correctly today and add a modest $300 monthly contribution, historical market averages put you at roughly $100,000 within 7 to 8 years. Without the monthly addition, just a $25,000 deployed and left alone, you cross that same threshold in approximately 10 to 11 years. If you wait another 2 years before positioning it, that entire timeline shifts. Not by 2 years, by 4 to 6. Because the compounding years you lost at the beginning were the most powerful ones on the curve. The clock that started at $25,000 does not pause while you get ready. It does not reward preparation. It rewards positioning. You did the hard part. You saved the money while everyone around you spent theirs. That required discipline most people genuinely do not have. Do not let inertia quietly erase what discipline built. The silent clock has been running. You can hear it now. The only question left is what you do before it ticks another month without you. If this gave you clarity, subscribe, because every week we cover exactly the financial mechanics nobody else is explaining directly.